When you think of military might, you probably picture massive tanks shaking the earth. But what happens when the battlefield is covered in 10 feet of soft snow or hidden deep in impassable swamps? Enter the unsung heroes of warfare, the miniature beasts. We're not talking about jeeps. We are uncovering the 10 smallest, strangest, and most unstoppable tracked military vehicles ever designed to conquer the frozen unknown. Most of these engineering marvels have been forgotten by history, but they saved countless lives. Stick around because number 1 is so small it didn't even need a driver. If you love uncovering hidden history, hit that subscribe button right now and let me know in the comments which of these tiny tanks you'd want in your garage. Kicking off our list is a Swedish legend that might look familiar, but its capabilities are often underestimated due to its quirky appearance. The Hägglunds BV 206 is an articulated all-terrain carrier originally developed for the harsh Nordic landscape. Unlike standard vehicles, it consists of 2 separate units joined by a sophisticated steering mechanism that powers all 4 tracks simultaneously. This unique design allows it to swim over deep snow and swampland where even the lightest infantry would sink. While it may look relatively modern compared to others on this list, its roots are purely utilitarian. It puts incredibly low pressure on the ground, less than half that of a human foot. This means it essentially floats over snow. Capable of carrying up to 17 combat-equipped soldiers across its 2 distinct sections, the BV 206 became the gold standard for cold weather transport, serving in over 25 countries. It is a master of versatility. It's fully amphibious, propelling itself in water with its own tracks, and can climb 60% slopes on hard ground. Though not heavily armored, its small footprint and supreme agility made it indispensable for rapid deployment in Arctic conditions. It proves that sometimes being able to go everywhere is better than being able to fight everything. Next, we head to Canada to look at a machine that blurs the line between civilian workhorse and military asset, the Bombardier Muskeg. Born from the need to traverse Canada's vast, treacherous muskeg, a type of unforgiving bogland that freezes solid in winter, this tractor was a revelation. Bombardier, already famous for inventing the snowmobile, applied their expertise to create this compact tracked utility vehicle in the 1950s. The Muskeg featured a watertight boat-like hull and exceptionally wide rubber tracks reinforced with steel crosslinks. These tracks were its secret weapon, distributing its weight so effectively that it could cross incredibly soft terrain without bogging down. While primarily a commercial success for logging and oil exploration, military forces quickly realized its potential for hauling supplies through northern frontiers where roads simply didn't exist. Powered typically by a robust Chrysler industrial engine, the Muskeg was never meant for the front lines of combat, but for the vital logistics that keep an army alive in sub-zero temperatures. Its ability to tow heavy sleds through deep powder made it a logistical lifeline in the most inhospitable environments on Earth, proving that raw industrial utility often translates perfectly to military necessity. Moving to the brutal eastern front of World War II, we find the Soviet STZ-5. This wasn't just a vehicle, it was a desperate necessity for the Red Army. Designed at the Stalingrad tractor factory, the STZ-5 was a hybrid between an agricultural tractor and a dedicated artillery prime mover. It was small, boxy, and notoriously slow, often maxing out at around 25 kilometers per hour on roads and much less in snow. However, speed wasn't its purpose. Reliability in the ruthless Russian winter was. Built with a simple, rugged multi-fuel engine that could start even when temperatures dropped to bone-chilling levels, the STZ-5 became the workhorse for towing divisional artillery pieces like the 122 mm howitzer. Its wide metal tracks were specifically geared to churn through the thick mud of the Rasputitsa season and the deep snows of winter offensives. Despite over 9,900 being built, few survived the war. They were driven until they broke, often abandoned when they could no longer move. Yet, without these tiny, unassuming tractors dragging guns to the front lines through impossible terrain, many key Soviet counteroffensives might have stalled in the snow. It is a testament to ugly, purely functional engineering. Before the BV-206 conquered the world, there was its smaller, arguably cuter predecessor, the Hägglunds BV-202. Developed in the late 1950s for the Swedish Army, this was the machine that pioneered the articulated steering concept for snow vehicles. It is noticeably smaller and narrower than its successor, giving it an almost toy-like appearance today, but don't let that fool you. The BV-202 was powered by a reliable Volvo engine, and just like its descendant, power was delivered to both the front and rear tracked units. Its defining feature was its utter silence on the snow compared to heavier tanks, and its almost magical ability to not get stuck. It used a unique system where the front unit could pivot to steer the rear unit, allowing it to snake through dense winter forests that would trap larger vehicles. It served for decades as the primary over-snow transport for NATO's northern flanks. While it lacked armor and defensive weaponry, its defense was its invisibility. It was so small and quiet against a snowy backdrop that it could move troops undetected. It remains a collector's favorite today due to its simplicity and incredible off-road performance. Let's rewind all the way to the end of World War I for an American experiment in miniaturization. The Ford 3-ton M1918. While often called a tank, it was more of an armed tracked runabout. Designed by the Ford Motor Company, it utilized not one but two Model T engines, with each engine powering one track. It was an ingenious, if somewhat bizarre, attempt to use mass-production automotive technology for war. Standing barely taller than a crouching man, it was incredibly cramped for its two-man crew, a driver and a gunner. Its small size was intended to let it swarm battlefields, overwhelming enemy trenches by sheer numbers rather than heavy armor. While it didn't see major combat in WWI due to the war ending, its design principles inadvertently made it a decent cross-country vehicle. It wasn't specifically designed for snow, but its remarkably light weight, just 3 tons, as the name implies, meant it didn't sink into soft ground as easily as the behemoth British heavy tanks of the era. It represents one of history's first true attempts at creating a compact armored fighting vehicle, paving the way for the tankettes that would see widespread use in the 1930s. Returning to the Soviet Union, we encounter the T-20 Komsomolets. If you thought the STZ-5 was small, the T-20 is positively tiny. Introduced in 1937, this was a fully armored artillery tractor, but it was so compact that the gun crew it was towing often had to ride exposed on small bench seats on the outside of the vehicle, freezing in the winter air. The T-20 was armed with a single machine gun and a small commander's cupola, giving it some bite, but its real job was towing light anti-tank guns like the 45mm directly into the heat of battle. Its small profile made it a difficult target for enemy gunners, which was fortunate because its armor was only designed to stop small arms fire. In deep snow, its automotive-based engine often struggled, but it was still better than horses. Thousands were produced and they bore the brunt of the early German invasion. You will often see them in historical footage, scurrying around massive Tiger or Panther tanks like angry beetles. They were eventually replaced by Lend-Lease vehicles, but the little T-20 held the line when the Red Army needed mobility most desperately. As World War II expanded into Arctic regions, the U.S. Army Air Forces needed something specific, a rescue vehicle that could reach downed pilots in the remotest, snowiest reaches of Alaska and Greenland. Enter the Allis-Chalmers M7 snow tractor. Looking like a cross between a Jeep and a miniature half-track that forgot its front wheels, the M7 was a dedicated snow machine. It featured a unique half-track system where the tracks could be fitted with skis in the front for steering or wheels for harder ground. It was heavily reliant on components from agricultural tractors, making it rugged and easy to repair in the field. Its primary mission wasn't fighting, it was survival. It towed rescue sleds, hauled warming equipment for frozen airplane engines, and broke trails for infantry. The M7 is often forgotten because it was a support vehicle, not a combat star. However, its specialized design for deep powder snow was ahead of its time. It bridged the gap between clumsy converted trucks and the true purpose-built snowcats that would follow later in the war. Now we reach a true legend, the M29 Weasel. This vehicle owes its existence to a wild, never-executed plan called Operation Plow, a proposal to drop elite commando units into Nazi-occupied Norway to destroy heavy water plants. They needed a vehicle that could be dropped by parachute, handle the deepest snow imaginable, and still carry weapons. Studebaker answered the call with the Weasel. The Weasel was a masterpiece of compromised engineering. It had wide tracks that took up almost the entire width of the vehicle, giving it ground pressure lower than a human skier. It could practically drive on clouds. Early versions were even designed to float. While Operation Plow was canceled, the Weasel was too good to waste. It was deployed everywhere from the muddy fields of Europe to the volcanic sands of Iwo Jima. It became the definitive light cargo carrier of WOT. After the war, it found a second life in Antarctic expeditions and ski resorts, proving that its design was nearly perfect for its intended environment. It is practically the grandfather of all modern civilian snowcats. At number 2 is perhaps the most recognizable oddity of WO2, the German Kettenkrad. Is it a motorcycle? Is it a tank? It's both. Officially designated the Kleines Kettenkraftrad HK-101, it was designed initially for German paratroopers as a light tractor that could fit inside the Junkers Ju-52 transport plane. It featured a motorcycle front fork for steering and a complex interleave track system, identical to those found on Tiger tanks, just miniaturized at the rear. This gave it incredible traction in mud and Russian snow, where standard motorcycles would immediately fail. The driver straddled it like a bike, while 2 passengers could sit facing backward behind him. Despite its ridiculous appearance, it was beloved by German troops. It was fast, highly maneuverable, and could tow surprising loads, including aircraft like the Me-262 jet fighter, to save aviation fuel on the tarmac. It stands as a unique example of German over-engineering creating something wonderfully weird yet highly effective. And finally, the number 1 smallest tracked military vehicle is the one that really breaks the rules, the Goliath. Technically known as the Leichter Ladungsträger Goliath, this wasn't a vehicle for people, it was a suicide robot. Standing only about a foot high and 4 feet long, these tiny track machines were remote-controlled via a long trailing wire connected to a joystick operated by a hidden German soldier. The Goliath was designed to carry 60 to 100 kilograms of high explosives into places too dangerous for soldiers, like heavily fortified bunkers or under enemy tanks. It would trundle slowly across the battlefield, looking like a toy, before detonating its massive payload. It came in both electric and gasoline-powered versions. While terrifying in concept, they were often ineffective. The control wires would get cut by artillery, or they would simply get stuck in trenches. However, they represent the very first practical deployment of remote-controlled drone vehicles in combat. It is the ultimate small military vehicle because it removed the human element entirely, a chilling precursor to modern robotic warfare. From Swedish snowwalkers and Soviet mini-tractors to German remote-controlled mines, these 10 tiny machines prove that size isn't everything on the battlefield. They conquered terrain that stopped giants in their tracks. Which one of these miniature marvels surprised you the most? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into obscure military history, please subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss our next mission. Thanks for watching.